Chapter 9 was about how to take care of the environment, the different chemicals, the physical, chemical, mechanical methods for cleaning, desanitizing, disinfecting, sterilization. Chapter 10, we're going to be looking at, treatments for us. What compounds, what methods are there for treating an infection? Now, a lot of students just think of this chapter 10 here, as the antibiotics chapter, because that's basically what it is. Different chemicals, different means of treating infections, whether they're bacterial, fungal, viral, parasitic. Now keep in mind that from a clinical standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, what we're going to be talking about is what is referred to as chemotherapy. Now I say chemotherapy, and a lot of people seem to think about, cancer, because that's, the new lexicon is that, chemotherapy is for cancer treatments only. Well, no, chemotherapy, based on its name, its etiology, look at that, chemotherapy, chemical therapy. Anytime you take a chemical or a compound, a pill, a drug, a solution, whatever, you drink a solution, whatever, that is to treat some ailment, an infection, an inflammation, whatever, that is chemotherapy. Now, from a clinical standpoint, the whole point of chemotherapy is to take a drug, give it to a patient that will then kill, destroy, minimize the metabolic abilities of an infectious agent. You have an infection, here is a prescription. There you go. That's chemotherapy. Now, when it comes to the different chemical agents, we try to group like with like, okay? What's their origin? Is it something that was bacterial or fungal in origin? You've got to remember, bacteria, fungi have been in an arms race fighting against each other, for limited access to space, to limited access to nutrients, water. They have been fighting each other for 1 billion or more years. So they've come up with great weapons to fight against each other with. Now, these weapons we've isolated, we've harnessed, and we refer to them as antibiotics. Penicillin, great example. Chemical compound produced by penicillium, the fungus Penicillium, as a mechanism for fighting back against bacteria in close proximity of penicillium. Fight back, keep away any competition. So if you look at table 10.1 here, characteristics of the ideal drug. You look at these. Toxic to a microbe, but not toxic to us. Turns out every chemical compound you will take has some level of toxicity, but it's a cost-benefit thing. For the average person, how toxic will this compound be? Hey, great, we have a chemical or a compound that will wipe out, pretty much, any infectious agent that you could come into contact with that could be in your body. Problem is, it has a high level of toxicity to the liver, and there may be some liver damage. You can still use that compound in a clinical setting, even though there's going to be a high chance of some liver damage, if you have an infection that no other antibiotic will work with, and the patient is on the verge of succumbing to the infection. Use this last bullet, this last weapon. This is the weapon of last resort. Yes, it'll wipe out the infection, but it might cause some damage. to the liver, well, the patient will be alive, and at a later time point, we can worry about the liver damage, liver, we could take care of that, but the patient will be alive, won't succumb to the infection. The majority of the chemicals and compounds, killer to the microbes, low levels of toxicity, liver, kidney, whatever, to the patient. You always want to go microbial-cidal instead of static. Cidal kills the microbes. Static just slows them down. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have an infections agent, a bacteria, whatever, and the only antibiotic you have will be something that's bacterial static. It's not going to kill the infection. It's not going to kill the microbes that kill the bacteria, but it's going to slow them down. They're still going to be growing. They're still going to be metabolically active, but it's going to slow them down to the point that within a few days, the immune system can start to kick in, and your own patient immune system can hopefully remove the infection. Cidal kills. Kills, within hours, within the day that you start taking the medication. But you continuously do it over 3, 4, 7 days you're taking the antibiotic, because it doesn't wipe out all of them instantly. The ones that survive the first day of treatment, majority of those are going to be killed on the second. Whatever survived the first, the second day, majority of those are killed on the third, the fourth. By the time you hit a week, all of them have been killed. You're also going to want something that's going to be soluble. Remember, we're water-based. So a chemical that's insoluble in water, not going to work so well in us. It's going to be hard. There are some chemicals, some medications you would take, some antibiotics that are not water-soluble. So you're going to have to take those with food. Take them with food so that the fats in whatever you ate will solubilize the compound. Fats get absorbed. Along with the fats will go the compound. Is there going to be something that's going to remain? You look at that one, remains active in tissues and body fluids. Is it going to stay in the tissues for a while? I remember back when the University of Louisville Medical School, I was doing clinical research and things. There would be people, there would be research labs get all excited. Ooh, look, we found a new chemical. We found a new compound that's going to treat X. Whatever X is, an infection, an inflammation damage, blah, 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 blah. Problem is, as soon as you inject it, hits the bloodstream, starts getting, filtered out by the kidneys, excreted in the urine within minutes. It's not staying around. So that means this patient would have to be on a fast drip all the time for days, if not weeks, to counter the infection. That's not workable. That's not a workable solution. You want something that's going to be retained in the tissues. Yes, you take a pill today. By tomorrow, 24 hours, yes, your kidneys, your livers have, turned it over or excreted it out in the urine. But that's why you take, multiple, doses a day over multiple days. You keep replenishing it in. But something that goes in and immediately goes out, not going to work. Now, we have some terminology we have to take into account here, okay? Remember, in sciences, and especially in medicine, words are coin of the realm. Okay, you have to use the correct words, the correct terminology at the correct times, specifically in medicine, because you do not want any gray area, any, he used this word, did he mean this or did he mean that? Specific words, specific meanings. So when you look here, table 10.2, there's a list of words that from here on out you need to be prepared to start using. You need to start hearing me, get used to hearing me use them. Prophylaxis. Prophylaxis is taking a medication ahead of time. there's a high chance I'm going to be exposed to something. I'm going to start taking this medication now so that when I do get exposed, the microbe gets in me, the chemical, the compound's already there. I don't have to wait till I get exposed, it's been there a few days, and I start to show signs, symptoms of an infection. It's in my body already, so if the microbe does get in me, chemical compound can all immediately start affecting it. Anything is antimicrobial. This is an umbrella term, all-inclusive. Anything that's microbial, this chemical, this compound, this is what you're using. We use the term antibiotics. Antibiotics has now become this catch-all phrase. Antibiotics is the taking of some drug as a mechanism for treating a microbial infection, whether it's bacterial, fungal, or parasitic. Please note, I did not say viral. Okay? What we think of as antibiotics have nothing to do with viral infections. So please, for the love of God, if you are ever a clinician and somebody comes in and says, I've got a runny nose, I need an antibiotic, say no. As Nancy Reagan used to say in the 80s, just say no. Then we also have to take into account synthetic, semi-synthetic. Synthetic are completely man-made. We made them. Doesn't mean we designed them completely. We may have taken something that was Mother Nature and then figured out a way to synthesize it in a test tube as opposed to growing up bacterial fungi and isolating it from them. And then narrow versus broad spectrum. Narrow spectrum, this chemical, this compound's good for one type of microbe and one type of microbe only, one type of bacteria. This is only good for gram-positives. This is only good for gram-negatives. This is only good for treating of Neisseria gonorrhea only. That's narrow spectrum. Narrow spectrum's great if you have some indication this is the type of microbe it could be, this infection that's causing this disease. It's a gram-positive of some sort. It's maybe some sort of a staph infection, Staph aureus, staph epidermidis, blah, blah, blah. It's a strep infection, Streptococcus pyogenes, Streptococcus faecalis, whatever. Narrow, great. If you really don't have any indication as to what this infection is, you can go broad spectrum. Broad spectrum, this is good for all gram-positives and some gram-negatives. This is great for all gram-negatives. This is great for all bacteria, period. As we're going to see in this chapter, going broad spectrum is great initially if you don't know the infection's bacterial in origin, but I have no indication of what kind it is. Great. Start with broad. Take a sample, send it off. Within a day or so, when they send you back, hey, the infection is probably caused by this bacteria, then you go from broad to narrow. Broad spectrum antibiotics, the great downside for them is they wipe out all the bacteria that should be there. That's why if you get taking some antibiotic that's a little bit broader spectrum, they also tell you, hey, you know what would be good? You probably might want to eat this with some yogurt. Replenish the microbes in your gastrointestinal tract. Because you have broad spectrum, it's going to take care of the infection, but it's going to take care of everything that's in you that should be there.